ladies. Happy break from the first spring session. I hope you guys are having a really good week so far. I hope that things are going well with your mind renewal, with your Trim Healthy Mama journey. I wanted to just touch base with you on some things that I've been learning in 1 Samuel and how it kind of connected to my Trim Healthy Mama journey and the mind renewal that we're doing and just a lot of the thought processes and things that we're learning. I also wanted to just show you my shirt. So it says, look back and thank God, look forward and trust God. So I want to encourage you guys to do that. Look back and thank God for all that He has done on your journey so far, and look forward and trust Him that He's going to do more. Just trust and believe. And I came across this, I've been looking for another coffee mug. I don't really collect coffee mugs, but I've been looking for one because I wanted one to kind of just boost my faith. Some mornings, if I wake up and my heart is burdened or heavy with something, I just, thought if I have it on a mug and I'm constantly picking up my mug, maybe that'll help me to remember, to have faith or hope or whatever. So I have a few mugs with verses and things on them that are encouraging. Sorry, my dogs are spastic today. But I just wanted something else, something more specific. And I didn't find what I was looking for, but I did find Spread Your Wings, which I thought was really cute. And it's got these little white butterflies along the rim on the inside. And I thought that was kind of good for our Trim Healthy Mama journey, but also our journey in growing with the Lord. So remember that, ladies, that when you do this, you can spread your wings. God is working with us in that whole butterfly motif for Trim Healthy Mama and transformation. Okay, so I've been learning in 1 Samuel, like I said, at church. We do expository preaching at our church, so we go verse by verse through a book. It's very helpful to me. My husband loves it because he's not really a big Bible reader. And so this has been really good for him. It's also really good, for your kids because they learn verse by verse the entire context of a book, not just one little scripture that someone might take out and preach about, which they might preach the right context, but sometimes they don't. Or sometimes they can use it for their own whatever. So 1 Samuel 15 is where I'm at today, just talking to you guys. And so that's the passage, or actually the chapter of 1 Samuel where Saul becomes rejected as king. And it's not a long chapter, but it's a lot to read through fully. So I'm probably not going to read the whole thing. You can do that. I would encourage you to read the whole book, the whole chapter. And maybe you can do this in your mind renewal time. Maybe you can, kind of use this as your mind renewal time, 1 or 2 days this week or whatever, however works out for you. I'm not even sure how long this video is going to end up being, so we'll see. But, so we start out talking, and really the whole theme of this chapter, and we talked about this in probably on a Thursday night recently, the whole obedience is better than sacrifice thing. So yes, sacrificing for the Lord is good, but He really wants our obedience. And when we obey Him, we do sacrifice, but sometimes things we sacrifice aren't necessarily in obedience to God. So it kind of goes in that order. But Samuel told Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you as king over His people Israel. Now listen to the words of the Lord. This is what the Lord of armies says. I witnessed what the Amalekites did to the Israelites when they opposed them along the way as they were coming out of Egypt. Now go and attack the Amalekites and completely destroy everything they have. Do not spare them. Kill men and women, infants and nursing babies, oxen and sheep, camels and donkeys." So, God is telling Saul what He wants to do through Samuel. And so Samuel gets his troops together, and he doesn't exactly obey God. Like, he goes through and does some of the things, but he doesn't do everything. So he tries to be good, but he doesn't try to be great. He tries to partially obey God. So if you go and skip down a little bit further, it says, Saul summoned the troops. This is verse 4. He came to the city to ambush them. He warned the Kenites. He struck down the Amalekites and from Havilah or Havilah, how you pronounce that, all the way to Shur, which is next to Egypt. He captured King Agag, but he completely destroyed all the rest of the people with the sword. Saul and the troops spared Agag and the best sheep, goats, cattle, and choice animals. So God said, just completely destroy everything, and they did it. They kept what they wanted, some choice things. They were not willing to destroy them, but they did destroy all the worthless and unwanted things. Then the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I made Saul king, for he has turned away from following me and has not carried out my instructions. Obedience is better than sacrifice and tradition. The Lord rejects Saul because of his disobedience. Coming up here in verse 9, or right there what we read in verse 9. Saul and the troops. Oops, was that verse 9? Yeah, verses 3 through 9. And then God actually just, God tells him in that verse what Saul did in verses 3 through 9 is why I'm rejecting him, why I regret having made him king. So Samuel became angry and cried out to the Lord all night. Early in the morning, Samuel got up to confront Saul, but it was reported to Samuel that Saul went to Carmel, where he set up a monument for himself. Then he turned around and went down to Gilgal. When Samuel came to him, Saul said, "May the Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." Saul is blind to the truth. He thinks he carried out God's instructions. Is he sure about that? Samuel says, then what is the sound of sheep and goats and cattle that I'm hearing? And Saul says, the troops brought them, and the Amalekites spared the sheep, goats, and cattle in order to offer a sacrifice to the Lord your God, but the rest we destroyed. Stop, said Samuel. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Tell me. Although you once considered yourself unimportant, have you not become the leader of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you as king over Israel and then sent you on a mission and said, go and completely destroy the sinful Amalekites. Fight against them until you have annihilated them. So why didn't you obey the Lord? Why did you rush on the plunder and do what was evil in the Lord's sight? But I did obey the Lord, Saul answered. I went on the mission the Lord gave me. I brought back King Agag and Amalek, and I completely destroyed the Amalekites. The troops took sheep. He's blaming other people for what he ordered them to do. It was his order. And God knows better. Samuel says, does the Lord take pleasure in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as obeying the Lord? Look, to obey is better than sacrifice. To pay attention is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination. And we rebel. When we have boundaries to keep, we rebel against the Lord. A lot of times we rebel, through our food choices. Sorry, that was a client on my watch. I'll have to answer her in a minute. He has defied God. He has rebelled against God and has rejected the word of the Lord. And then God rejects him as king. So what hinders us from being great is just being good. Do you want to be good at your Trim Healthy Mama journey, or do you want to be great at it? Do you want to be able to honor and glorify God through it, or you just want to get weight loss out of it? Like, what is your goal on this journey? Be obedient, not self-serving. Be obedient and not just religious. Saul lost his character, his friend, and his crown because he chose sacrifice over obedience. God rejects Saul personally because he was self-serving and not obedient. God never forgets when you stand in the way of his people or in the way of his plans. Whose rule are you operating under, yours or God's? So whose rule are we operating under when we are tempted and we give into those temptations, when we don't keep our boundaries? Whether we do it intentionally or whether we do it accidentally or whether we're under a lot of stress and it's just, we need some grace. Regardless of that, we still we're operating under our own rule and the rule of the enemy through us. We're not operating under God's rule. We have to remember that, Saul chose stupid actions and therefore he chose stupid consequences. It's really funny because, when my kids, well, it's not really funny. It's kind of funny, not funny, haha, but funny, like interesting. So when my kids, when our kids are little, we discipline them and they, get angry with us when we have to discipline them, so like I don't know, like my son one time decided while we were gone and his older sisters were here supposedly watching him, that he was going to put off firecrackers in our bathroom. So he went to our bathroom because he knew the girls weren't going to find him in there. And he lit little firecrackers that he found somewhere in my husband's shed, and got our torch from the top shelf in our kitchen, and set off firecrackers in our bathroom. Now, I have absolutely no extent to, I don't know to what extent he set them off, because obviously they didn't crack and pop. because my daughters would have heard it, or maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe my daughters weren't home. I think maybe they weren't home. I think he was old enough to be home by himself. But anyway, the point is, we get home and there's a burn mark on my white laminate bathroom counter, and I can't figure out what it is. And so I'm looking around like, what in the world? You know, it's like a cigarette got burnt there, and we don't smoke in this house, so what in the world? So I happened to go over to our little toilet area where our trash can is and saw that there were firecrackers in the trash can. Now, why my son wasn't smart enough to realize he needed to put those firecrackers, the evidence, somewhere else besides where I would see it, I don't know what he was thinking. But I think he didn't realize that the counter was going to get burnt, and he probably just like put them out and, you know, threw it away. I don't know exactly what happened. All I know is he chose stupid actions, and he chose stupid consequences because he got in trouble. Major trouble. And thank the Lord he didn't burn my house down, because those would have been devastatingly stupid circumstances. And just, I mean, beyond, because he could have been killed or hurt. And we could have lost our home. Just so many things could have happened in that scenario. And I know that that looks like a severe thing compared to, you know, choosing an off-plan food. But honestly, God says, you know, things don't vary, you know, in his eyes. A sin is a sin is a sin. None are worse than any other. No choices are any the other. When we choose bad, stupid actions and bad actions, we choose stupid and bad consequences, period. So how is disobedience working for us in that Trim Healthy Mama journey? When we break our boundaries over and over again, and we cheat, and we backtrack, and then we get back on plan, and then we are on plan for a little while, and then we, you know, backtrack again and have some more off-plan foods, and have our weekly cheats or every other month cheat. I mean, every other week cheats or whatever. How is that working for us? Is it working well? Are we reaching our goals? Well, I mean, I'm still losing weight. I'm getting closer. I haven't gained a lot. Well, okay. Maybe that's true, but how close could you have been to your goal had you just stuck to good actions equal good consequences, or obedience? How is obedience working for you? If I were to ask you that and you obeyed and you kept your boundaries the entire time for your Trim Healthy Mama journey with just a few little minor things here or there, because no one's perfect, how much closer would you be? If I asked you how it was working for you, you would say it was working phenomenally. But, you know, we do the whole, like, we've been talking about this week in Polos, the whole moderation thing, or a lot of cheat meals, and we are choosing you know, something that's not working for us. If it's not working for you, stop doing it. It's like insanity, that definition of insanity. I don't even remember the quote, who the quote is from, but, you know, the definition of insanity is, you know, doing the same thing over again, choosing the same action over again, and expecting a different result, a different consequence, and it's not going to happen. Live a life of obedience to God, because he deserves it. He does not deserve disappointment and regret. I don't want God to talk to me the way that he talked to Saul. I don't want him to have to talk to me the way he talked to Saul. He was justified in doing that, but I don't want to hear that from the Lord. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I want to be able to see people as I'm going in my daily life activities, you know, here and there, the store, coaching appointments, at church, out in my community, wherever, and them say, you know, what are you doing? I see that you look healthier, you feel healthier, you're serving and you have so much more energy, your health is better, or you look thinner. Whatever the thing is that they say to me that is positive, I want to be able to give God the honor and the glory for that. I'm not taking credit for it because I didn't do it. And if I chose bad actions and poor actions, and I don't have those great little comments that people make, I mean, that's even less glory God gets, because I'm choosing, they're seeing me, they see I'm a Christian, they know I'm a Christian, but I'm not living the Christian life. How can I glorify God in that? I'm not living in the boundaries that God set for me. And that's even with food. I know we don't like to say it is, but it is. It is still with food. We turn food into an idol, and therefore we have turned it into a spiritual thing, which everything is a spiritual thing, because we don't compartmentalize compartmentalize our faith. But, you know, we have to remember, everything we say, think, and do is supposed to honor and glorify God. And that's a really hard thing to live up to. Doesn't mean we have to be perfect at it, but we have to be trying. And if we're constantly going off plan, constantly breaking our boundaries, are we really trying to do that? Are we taking the time to be intentional and say, you know what, Lord, you did this for me. I'm going to do this for you. And I want to be able to give you glory. It's just some things to think about. This is not a guilt trip. This is not because I mean, I've been there. I know how you feel, and I've been through it. So I know what it's like. And I'm talking to myself just as much as I am to anybody else, because even if I don't eat off plan a lot or hardly ever, I overeat and over indulge plenty. Just because you are being confident in one area doesn't mean you are being just because you're being obedient in one area doesn't mean you're being obedient completely. So if God has asked you to be completely obedient and keep your Shemot Mom boundaries, having regular cheats and having times, I'm not talking about, oh, I messed up. I'm not talking about, oh, this happened and, a little mess up, a little slip, a little break in boundary. I'm talking about on a regular, consistent basis, constantly having that attitude. We have to realize that we're not being completely obedient. God requires complete obedience, not partial obedience. What witness and example are we setting for others? Would you tell people they can justify partial obedience? Would we tell our kids that? Would we say, okay, you know what? You don't have to obey me completely in this area. We had a rule in this house: no fire. No, you don't play with matches. You don't play with torches. This is not, this is off limits to you. This is a restriction. You do not touch these things. This is why, because it could cause a fire. Someone could get killed or harmed. It could burn down the entire neighborhood. We had rules in this house, but my son chose to break the rules. So we require we required complete obedience from him, but he didn't give that to us. And he had some huge, complete consequences and repercussions from that, because I don't exactly remember what all the disciplinary actions we took, but we took great lengths to teach him a good lesson. So would we tell our kids, would I have told my son, okay, you don't have to obey completely about the whole fire thing. It's okay, if you want to fudge a little. No, I would never do that. I would never say that, especially if he was home alone or he was home with my daughters. What kind of parent would have I been to say, oh, you don't have to listen to me when it comes to the rules exactly. You can fudge a little on the whole, restriction as far as, no fire, no playing with fire, no playing with matches. I would never do that. We would never do that. So why do we think it's okay to be partially obedient in any other thing that God, and any other boundary that God gives us? If we can be that strict with our children, and we expect that we expect our children to obey us, then why do we not expect that God wants us to obey him? And why do we get angry when our kids don't obey us? We get disappointed in them, frustrated, angry, sorrowful. Why do we think God doesn't feel that way? And why are we okay with putting God in that position? Put yourself in God's parental shoes. Let's see. Be careful how you justify partial obedience. Be careful how you ignore the voice of God. That is basically what I'm, getting from this whole chapter, because Saul ignored God's voice. Saul chose partial obedience, and God rejected him. I have a lot of notes down here in my Bible. I don't know if you guys can see those on the camera, but I have a lot of notes. So I kind of want to go through them and make sure I'm not missing anything. I wrote down for myself personally that I don't want to disappoint my father. Self-absorption builds worship and monument to self. So when I'm self-absorbed about my True Healthy Mama journey, constantly whining and complaining because I can't have what I want when I want it, I'm being self-absorbed. I am being selfish. I'm not thinking about the benefits my family gets from me taking care of myself. I'm not thinking about the glory God gets when I take care of myself and choose to stay within my boundaries. I'm just being selfish. Partial obedience is still disobedience. And that's, what I reiterated again down here at the bottom of my notes. Let's see. Saul answered him, I have sinned, I have transgressed the Lord's command in your word. Because I was afraid of the people, I obeyed them. Now, therefore, please forgive my sin and return with me so I can worship the Lord. So, Saul's giving excuses as to why he did, why he did it. But Samuel says, I will not return with you because you rejected the word of God. The Lord has rejected you and being king over Israel. When Samuel turned to go, Saul grabbed the corner of his robe and it tore. Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kinship of Israel away from you today and has given it to your neighbor who is better than you. Furthermore, the eternal one of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not man who changes his mind. So God has let down the law. God has laid down the law. He has set the boundary for Saul. Saul broke the boundary. Now, God gives us a lot more grace, I feel like, many times, as opposed to this. Of course, we have Jesus mixed in there, in the New Testament that kind of, Jesus was here to fulfill the Old Testament, but God also is a just God, and he expects us to follow the boundaries that he set. So how can we do that? We need to see life through God's eyes. And align our priorities with his, and and that's where the whole mind renewal thing comes from. And Anna was mentioning mind renewal in the polo the other day. Just remember, mind renewal doesn't have to take a lot of time, but so what if it does? So what if it does take a lot of time? Guess what? You get to spend a lot of time at the feet of your Savior. What better way can you spend your time? I know on this earth we have time constraints, but you know what? If I don't go to work one day, and I know this sounds elementary and it's probably going to sound naive and gullible, but it's the truth. If I don't go to work one day, say I have a job outside the home. If I don't go to work one day because I'm spending the day with the Lord and I get fired, guess what? God's going to find me a new job. I'm not worried about it. I'm not stressed about it. You have to have that much faith in knowing that, these other things that have to get done are not a priority. Sitting at the feet of the Savior, renewing our minds, putting on his truth, taking off the lies, keeping his boundaries, walking with him daily through this, tapping into his power, all of that is more precious than anything else. And our family is going to benefit from it. Our co-workers, our whatever, whoever we come in contact with is going to benefit from the good that God is doing through us, as long as we allow him to and we obey and follow that good. He is our shepherd. He is calling us. If we are his sheep, if you don't know this, sheep in a flock, they know their shepherd's voice. If they hear another shepherd call, they don't go running to that shepherd. They go running to the shepherd that's been with them the entire time, that's been taking care of them, training them, and leading them. So we hear our shepherd's voice and we should be following. We should be keeping those boundaries, following and staying within those protective boundaries with him. I'm trying to see if there's any other notes I wanted to, if God calls you to do something and you find something better to do that is for him and good, are you obeying God? No. If God calls you to do something, he expects you to do the thing he said to do. He didn't expect you to go around it, to find other things to do that are also good. Our pastor gave this analogy that when he was a teenager, his dad bought this beautiful Corvette with like red leather seats, and I think the Corvette was black or something. And he wanted to drive it. It was, around that time that he got his license, and it was the father's car, and the father, would never let him drive it. So the father came to him one day and said, I think you've earned, trust as far as your driving ability. And so I'm thinking about letting you use the car for your date on such and such night, whenever it was. And so, the pastor was like, oh my gosh, yes, please. He said, well, but I got stipulations. There's, some things to do here. I need you to cut the grass. If you cut the entire front lawn, then when I get back, I'm headed out. If you cut the entire front lawn, when I get back, you've got the keys and you get to go with the girl, just be careful with my car. So, the dad leaves and goes to work or wherever in a different car. This is an extra car. And so the son gets up and says, yeah, man, I'm going to cut the grass. I'm going to, be able to use the car tonight. Called up his girlfriend. I'm taking you out. We're going out in my dad's car, blah, blah. And she's so excited. And so he goes out there and he starts looking at the car and he's like, it kind of needs a wash. So he starts washing the car and cleaning the car out from the inside, and spent all day completely detailing the car. Looked better than it came off the showroom floor. So when the dad comes home, the grass is still, high and there's weeds everywhere and stuff. And he's like, so what happened today? What'd you do all day? And the kid said, oh, Dad, I did you a favor, man. I completely detailed the entire car. Like, I washed it. He describes everything to detail what he did. And the dad's like, but what about the grass? And the kid's like, our pastor, when he was a kid, was like, well, yeah, I didn't do the grass, but I did something better for you. The car really needed it. It was dirty. There were some areas that needed to be cleaned. I completely detailed that baby. And the dad's like, well, I really appreciate that you did that, but you won't be driving it tonight. And the son got angry, and the aggravator's like, what are you talking about? Look what all I did. Wasn't that good enough for you? And the dad's like, but that's not what I asked you to do. We had a deal. I asked you to do this, and you were going to get this consequence, and that's not what you chose. You chose not to do what I asked you to do. You might have chose something else that you deemed was better, but it wasn't better, and it wasn't what I asked you to do, regardless of whether it was better or not. So think about that. It's always best to follow our True Healthy Mama boundaries. Don't find a way around them. Don't say, well, I'm going to cheat for the next a few days, and then I'll get back on and I'll be even better. I'll do a lot of fuel pull meals and this and that, to really get my calories down low, and I'll walk about 4 miles. Yeah, that's not what God asked you to do, and that's not what he wanted. He just wanted you to keep your boundaries. Simple. All right, ladies, be godly when, all the time, just try to be godly. Try to renew your mind in a godly manner. Try to choose godly consequences and godly actions, or the reverse, godly actions and godly consequences. And just know that you are loved and prayed for. And this is not, like I said, a guilt trip. This is a totally I'm there with you. This resonated with me so much. I was like, oh my word, Lord, yes. I need to obey you more. I need to just do what you ask me to do. I need to stop being a stubborn kid, who thinks he can work his way around it and still get the consequences that you have for me. You said keep the boundaries, and you would bring these consequences. I'm going to do it. And you know what? God doesn't always give us the consequences that we want either. So remember that too. God might be trying to heal your body more than he is trying to thin it out in certain areas. I know I've got areas of my body I would love to lose some rolls or some curves or whatever, but that's not the body God gave me, and that's not the covenant he made with me. He made a covenant with me that if I followed my True Healthy Mama journey, he would bring forth fruit, and he would allow it to be good for me and my family and others, and he would glorify himself through it. And that is what he said. So I have to be grateful and thankful for whatever fruit he brings. And I have to understand that he loves me, and what he's doing for me is for my best. And that he's going to take care of everything if I just seek him first and obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice. All right, ladies, I love you. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and take care this week during your break, and we'll get started on session 2 on May 1st.